Hello, we are Coping Life Talk. And today, as we promised, we are hosting Lisa Silvani. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you.
Hello,
And thank
everyone.
you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
joining us today. Our co hosts are Candy Sheehan and Scott Kiddle. Hello. Our purpose today is to talk about coming home to ourselves. This is what we discussed last week. And since our time zones are so far away, we are 12 hours away from Lisa. And so today, when, for example, we meet at 5 p.m., it is 5 a.m. in Jakarta, right?
Yes, I think it's
Yes.
last week. Yeah.
Yes, so that's why today we will be talking about coming home to ourselves. We will see the topic on the screen. And Lisa, welcome. Coping Life Talk is live already for 2 years and a half. And we started during COVID to help people dealing with all things that suddenly fell on their heads and on ours as well. So it was not that hard because we were going through the same issues: isolation, COVID, and then lots of death and accident cases, new cases. Lots of people were in the hospital. So same things you went through. But above it all, daily things that we had to deal before COVID. And of course, family situations and our need to deal with finances and jobs and our personal issues that apply to our characters. What we've learned that you're a medical doctor.
Yes, I
And
am.
so please tell about how is that as a medical doctor, you realize that it is not enough for you just to give a prescription, just to give a medicine. You realize that it is so much more in every person's case that you're dealing with. So please share about yourself, first of all, who you are, and then we will start asking you questions about what does that mean, coming home to ourselves.
Thank you so much, Lydia, and hi, Candy and Scott. Thank you for having me today. And my name is Lisa Silvani, and I am a medical doctor. So I've been practicing medicines for about 12 years right now. And in that 12 years, I've learned a lot and I've been changing my practices from general practitioners to aesthetic medicines to anti-agings. And right now, I'm practicing and focusing on functional medicines. And in functional medicines, we know that health is not just about drugs or medications. There's a lot more to health than what I've learned back in medical schools, like lifestyles. And inside the lifestyles, there are so many things that it's not only about nutrition, it's not only about the diets, but it's also about your mindset, your uh, your emotions, which is correlated between the body and the mental health, the mental health. And when you said that, how I connect the medical field when I treating my patients is usually in every cases I will look at their medical histories. Inside of their medical histories, there are so many things that related to how they are raised, you know, the family, family dysfunctionalities and things like that, coping mechanism, just like your shows, coping. So that is also something that I took into the health planning sessions. So that is how I combine things. And when I wrote the book, Coming Home to Myself, it's not actually based on the medical practice or the medicine or any cases that I've been through. It's actually based on my own personal reflections. So back on, yes, 2020, with COVID, there's a moment, like a momentarily pause, where I think you also have it, like we don't know how to cope with all of this thing, that the isolations that, we know about Zoom, but we don't really get used to using it. So there's a moment where we don't know what to do, so we just stop doing everything. Like, I
Mhm.
also transitioning my practice from offline to online. And that very moment, many things happened to me. Many things inside my personal life, inside the practice, and everything. So that is why I do self reflections. And on those self reflections, I found a lot of things, which is not about the health or the medicines. It's not something that I can explain through medicine's framework. So, and I like psychology since, I think, since teenagers. I like psychologists. I read books about psychology since teenagers. I think the one reason why I'm not being a psychologist right now is because my parents didn't allow it at that moment. So, yeah. So I like it a lot, and I do self reflections. And the book was written based on that. So, yeah. Yes, Candy.
The question I have for you right now, and this isn't exactly your area of expertise because I know it's anti-aging, but in the United States, we have just, it's a crisis with our young people. We are finding that they did not come through COVID and this isolation very well. And I'm wondering, is there anything you can do when someone's younger so that they won't have to deal with these problems when they're older? I know a lot of young people right now, and I'd love to know how to help them kind of work through some of these things. Is it something that you have to have age and wisdom to deal with, or can you figure this out at a younger age? And are you finding that in Jakarta too? Are your young people in trouble? Ours here, many of them really are.
Okay, so um, I'm not exactly as young as that. So, but I know a lot of young people are struggling through the isolations. I know that perfectly well. I think the reasons why I can self-reflect is mostly of my backgrounds, and I do like psychologists, like I told you, but not many young people will want to reflect on themselves. It's not as easy as it seems. Like, have you know about? Do you know about shadow works? Like in self-love works, we do the thing that we call shadow works, which is not easy. It's not fun. And in Jakarta, Indonesia, we tend to hear the terms of healing. But the terms of healing that is becoming a trend right now is more about traveling. Like, you travel a lot and then you have fun and laugh with your friends, which is not about the self-love itself. Self-love is messy. It's really, really messy. It's like seeing the parts of yourself that you don't want to see. It's not easy. So I have to tell you that there will not be a lot of young people who want to do that um, voluntarily. Like, sometimes they have to be pushed or being pulled by situations before they are, have that kind of realizations. Okay, you know what? This is something that I need to do. Like, but I think the one thing that we can encourage them is to be honest and be more authentic. Like, we have like this whole concept of sameness. Like, we have this whole concept of being part of community, but at one point it's good to being part of community, but it's also good to be the person that you are. Like, I think every person created beautifully, just as who they are. But somehow we don't want to accept someone that we think that they are different, like, the things like that. So when we can encourage them to be who they are, and I think many young people right now needs to be encouraged that way, or otherwise they're going to fall through. Like, so many people quit their job because they don't feel, satisfied. I've seen it in Indonesia a lot, and I think that is mostly because they are not being appreciated for who they are. And I think that by encouraging that, we encourage self-love too.
I wondered, did the pandemic cause us to really do more reflection? So many of us were isolated, and then maybe we just thought, well, what is it I'm doing and why am I doing this or putting up with it? Did the pandemic make things worse in that way or make people more reflective? Because I think we all know people that just, no, I'm not going to do this job anymore. They quit. And so I'm curious about that. Was it just one of the outcomes of COVID?
I think yes. I think people right now are more self-reflective. I think so, based on what I've seen, and I do a lot of webinars. Sometimes free webinars. It's in Indonesian, so it's mostly for Indonesian people. And what I saw is that so many of the youngs right now are more into exercise, more into nutrition, and yes, and they don't really want to work late. Maybe you've heard the terms of quiet quitting. Yeah, so it's something, yeah, quiet quitting. Yes, it's something that is also happening right now in Indonesia. I think more and more young people tend to want to have their own business. They're working as self-employed, freelance, things like that, and mostly not because the salary. It's not about the income, but mostly because they feel like it's something that they want to do, like reflecting on their purpose, reflecting on what they want to do for the rest of their life. So yeah, it's getting on the trend right now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm glad you brought up this. Scott, did you have a question?
I was just going to say, it sounds like there's a greater desire for autonomy among those folks, and even though, as you said, it may mean that there's less income, less stability, less security. At least I'm in charge of my destiny.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and but the question that I see can be asked after we hear Candy's question about the young generation, isolation, and pandemics, all the new patterns that are behavioral and also social that are shaping, and we probably will see the result of that soon. Not right away, but I think we already see something that some changes. But the autonomy that you, Scott, brought up also, I think, takes us even closer. Both questions, appreciate them, takes us even closer to your book. Because then imagine in isolation, you find something about yourself, or you finally discover that, oh my gosh, I'm alone finally, but I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do with myself. Who am I? And this is a very good question, because last time when we talked about your book and we talked about your approach to health, that it's actually not just all our symptoms, but it takes, like you said, takes us back to our family, how we were brought up. What kind of behaviors were established in our family, the values, and then we want it or not, but it affects not only who we are, but it affects our health. But so the question I have, so last time we watched a video that was an interview with Coach Ria, and you talked about when she asked you a question, what is the most important thing? And you said forgiveness. And that's what you in your book you start actually the very first chapter after introduction and acceptance, which is a huge part for young people to accept themselves as who they are. And I think that we adults probably struggle with that because we still struggle with diversity, right? Because that should include all of us and accept people as who they are. But it starts with accepting ourselves, who we are as individuals, right? But then back to back, you move to forgiveness. Since we ended on that note, forgiveness, could you start with forgiveness today? Why forgiveness is major for you?
Okay, well, this is a hard one. I think forgiveness is a hard thing and a major thing for a lot of people, probably also for some of you. And a part of it is not just about forgiving of what happens to us or what others did to us. The biggest part, I think, is about forgiving ourselves. I mean, at the first journey to do self-love work, yes, you will feel the anger, the hatred, jealousy, you name it. When you do a self-love work, it will come up to the surface, honestly. And this is not something that I do to my patient. It's something that I'm doing to myself. Although sometimes on occasions, if I see fit, whenever I see fit, I do encourage my patients to do this. But it came out to the surface, and then the first ones is about like what other people do to you, what, the pain that they cause you, the betrayal, the backstabbing, you name it. It's just yes, like events after events after events. And then after you accept the things that you cannot change them, and then you need to release them. And one of the releasing part is forgiving them. And after you forgive the others, after you forgive the people that hurt you, at one point, the biggest thing that comes up after that is low self-worth. And then, it starts to come up like, why I'm allowing that to happen to me? Like, what did I do that is so wrong that I deserve to be treated like that? And that is a major problem because, when you put the blame on others, that is it's not a good thing. Like, you have to take accountability for yourself, yes, but it's not as hurtful and it's not as destructive as when you put the blame into yourself. And so after forgiving others, you will need to learn how to forgive yourself. And that is the biggest part. But not until you can accept you for who you are, forgive yourself, and accept that, and still loving yourself despite all of the mistakes, all of the blindness, all of the problems that, all of the accountability parts that you've took on yourself, and still be able to love you for who you are. That's when you truly, loving yourself, come to terms with it.
I just wanted to be sure I understood this correctly. So maybe you were really wrong. And the truth is the other person did something really bad. And what if that person, they're not sorry and they're not going to say sorry because they aren't. They just go on with life. Should you forgive them anyway and just drop it and let that go? Is that what you're saying? Forgive that person? Okay.
Yes.
Talk a little bit more about why would you do that?
Yes.
Because they were awful to me and I'm really upset about it. Why should I forgive them? And what is your feeling about that?
It was hard, to be truthfully. I was an introvert, and yeah, so and I took my time on health organizations, on medical organizations. So as you can probably notice that I will take part a lot in community and communities, in organizations. You will meet with the kind of people that is not so good, no matter how good you are. And yes, they're not going to say sorry. They're going to deny all of that. They're going to talk bad about you and put the blame on you. And then, like, I don't know, probably tell the whole world about why you're being so bad to them. Well, the exact thing that happened is the opposite. But at the same time, I can choose to be victim, or I can choose to move on. And forgiving them is not about them. I mean, forgiving is not about forgetting. It's very different thing. Like, I don't forget whatever that happened to me. I don't forget, but I release the feeling of hurtful, because you cannot move on if you still feel victimized, if you still feel hurt. You can. You will always choose. You can prove it. You will always choose the same dynamics. You will always choose the same relationship, the same people with the one that hurt you in the past, if you don't try and heal that. Because once you heal that, you will see that there is something inside of you that attracts that kind of people. And you can set boundaries to them. So that is what it means.
Interesting enough, when you great conversation, when you talked about forgiving yourself, I want to challenge you. Then you says you can forgive yourself until you accept yourself fully. Did I hear you correctly? Yes. So I want to stretch it a little. Does it mean in any way that when we struggle to forgive other people, does it also come with accepting them for who they are? Is it any connection with acceptance as it is with the self-forgiveness? Or those are two different categories?
Okay, so accepting people as they are is something that you need to do to be able to be in relationships. But it doesn't mean that you will need to accept their behavior. That is two different things. Like, yeah,
But it is not connected to forgiving them, right?
No, it's not.
Okay,
no, it's
that's
not.
what I wanted to know. Okay,
No,
because
no,
it sounded for me like, well, it could be maybe a discovery. Aha! If I accept myself and I can forgive myself, and it's an important step, then maybe if I accept another individual for who he or she is, then maybe that will be easier to forgive. But it's not how it works.
No.
Okay,
no,
thank you for that. Yeah, because you
and
know.
it's also,
Go ahead.
yeah, and it's also different parts, like accepting people for who they are and accepting their behavior. It's because sometimes people's behavior are also like, we are, you know, we've lived about like what 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Along that way, we've come to terms with many things. Some of them are trauma. Some of them suffer abuse or toxic relationships. And also other people. When we can see ourselves that, you know what, I'm not perfect, and somewhere along the lines, it's not always my fault, but also other people, like they were also probably traumatized by their, childhood. That is not something that we can tell or know, but we can choose to accept them. But we can also choose to set boundaries. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you stay in a toxic relationship. That's not it.
Right. So boundaries seems to me that when we accept others, but we do not accept the way how people behave or treat us. So it's not the same. We accept, of course, people for who they are, but then if it comes to either neglect, abuse, harm, trauma, then we have our boundaries that actually affect how we accept them, but we do not accept how they behave.
No.
Or treat others. Okay. We figured it out. But so since we go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to make the comment that talking about self-love, if we don't actively and intentionally set the boundaries, then we're not acting in a loving way towards ourselves, because we're without the boundaries, we will continue to allow ourselves to be
Yeah.
wounded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then how about, yeah, go ahead.
Which is the why I self-reflect on the first part, Scott. It's actually about boundaries for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Thank you.
Great. So then, since we are talking about coming home to ourselves, and I think it is the hardest thing because we don't know what we will discover. But when I listened to your podcast with Coach Ria, you started with saying that I used to be a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yes,
so
boundaries.
yeah, yes, boundaries. And then Scott's question just it's really close to that because self-love and people pleasing side of us, I think they do not match, right? So to this is a great question, Scott, because we I am a horrible people pleaser. Used to be horrible. And so when you said that, I said, "Oh, I want Lisa on our podcast because we can learn something from you." But so, what is a red flag? How did you even recognize that you are a people pleaser?
Well, everyone just whenever anyone, even if it's not, even if it's someone that I just get to know, like 10 minutes, ask me to do something, I will say yes. I think that's a people pleaser enough. So,
Is it like a scale that will help us? Like, okay, here from 1 to 10. Oh my gosh, run! I am a people pleaser. But so, how do any parameters, any questions, maybe you can help us with that will clear that? It's like give us an insight how to first of all diagnose it,
identify.
but second stop it. Like just stop it. Okay.
So I think the first thing is that whenever you do something for others, like helping, giving your time, but deep in your heart you don't want to do it for whatever reason that is, either that you're tired, but then you're people pleasing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
it's like you put yourself you use yourself and treat yourself not as a priority. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's a sign. So if we feel tired or not wanting to do something but we do it anyway, that's a clear signal that we
yes.
Okay.
For me
Okay.
it's a very clear signal
Okay.
because as a medical doctor, like there's a part of me that wants to do like social works, and for me I'm having fun doing that. Like it's fun for me, it's fun. So whenever you are having fun, even when you're doing something that is, like, just say you don't really have any material benefits like that, but you're having fun, then it's not a people pleasing, that's you pleasing yourself. Like that's you being happy with yourself. But even if you are like getting paid to do something, but deep down that, oh my god, you know what, I really hate doing this, you need to ask yourself.
Okay, so that's actually a very good illustration of your journey coming to yourself, because this is how you start paying attention to the signals, body signals, your mood, your emotions, and when people ask you to do something, instead of running, you're just like, okay, my radar says that that's not what I should do. But also another side of that, Lisa, help me to understand. When even parents, a child, definitely a teenager, does not want to do something, and parents will conclude, oh, you're stubborn, you're selfish, right? So instead of listening, and this is where I think the conflict of between generation actually is very strong, because we just don't understand. We have the parental authority, the child should do that. So where is that line that a child should listen to the parent, or the parent should respect what the child says without saying you're selfish, egoistic, you're spoiled rotten. So where's that boundary?
Okay, so first of all, I don't think that we should talk to our child that they are selfish, spoiled brat, something like that. I definitely never talk like that to my daughter. I have a daughter, 12 years old, teenagers.
Oh, wow.
And yes,
Yeah.
she will be having this every time she's tired and I ask her to do something. So she pout. And so I know that. I understand that. I mean, especially teenagers, most of the time you cannot really ask them to do the things that they need to do. But I think that for kids, especially younger ones, they are on the way to growth, like not only about their, the body or the physical growth, but also the mental growth. So it is first important for us to not minimize the mental health, because what I see, most parents think their child is a very mini human, like mini human that don't have feelings, they always have to do whatever they think they need to do. Like, no, it's not. And at one point, so for me, my bonds and my daughter is pretty close. And I'm one of the type of mom that can say, I've learned something from my daughter. And when you pay attention to your kids, you can learn like one or two things, actually. Because children's are mostly honest. Like when they want to do something, when they don't want to do something, when you ask them to apologize to someone, they don't want to do it. There's probably something behind them. And it is sometimes, especially on Eastern parts of the world, that we are very big on doing apology to to seniors, to to parents, things like that. But at times you also have to recognize what is actually happening behind their nose. Like, why are they saying those? And you might be surprised at what you will learn, actually. So yes, and I'm not saying that every children's need to be treated in the same way. No, because there are some behavior that you cannot tolerate that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And for some, that needs to be treated like an adult, like well, not you're not going to tolerate the behavior, and you need to do therapy for the children before they really reach that adolescence, because it's easier to change the behavior of children before they reach adolescence. When they already reach like 16s, 18s, they're not gonna, you don't really have that kind of influence on them. So, but it's not just about setting boundaries, setting rules, setting regulations. It's not just about that, but it's allowing themselves to be themselves and remembering that they're not us. They're like, my daughter is not my mini me. Like, she has her own personality that I have to respect. But on the other side of that, I know that my daughter is going to respect my decisions. I know that my daughter is going to respect the rules that I've given her if I give her the same respect to be herself, to have her space. Like simple things, like if I want her to knock on my door before she's entering my room, then I will do the same.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I don't really have to say, so I don't really have to say you have to knock on my doors, because I'm already doing it.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
so
Lydia,
important for adults to model behavior rather than be instructive, be more demonstrative, right?
Yes, and easier actually. You don't really get the negative backlash
That's
because
Pushback.
true.
Yeah.
they can. I mean, they can. Like if I'm a Muslim. If I ask my daughter to do prayer, but I'm already doing it. You can't really say no, mom. You can.
Yeah.
Like when your mom and dad doing it, well, that's just part of being a family. You do that too.
right. Very good.
What is interesting to me, go ahead, Candy.
Well, I was just wondering, I don't want us to get too close to the end. I don't want to interrupt this conversation, but I don't want us to forget about the 6 steps to come home to yourself. I'd like to hear those 6 steps, but go ahead and finish this conversation, Lydia. What did you want to say?
No, let's go to the 6 steps, because my question was still about the book.
Yes.
And since we talked about children and parents, it was about the chapter that you called Ego 5. Could you briefly say what it is about, that people can maybe get kind of interested when we talk about children and in our individualistic society? I'm not sure how it is in Indonesia, but America is very individualistic, and the whole world now is more like, even you talked about younger people who prefer, who are not as loyal to their employers as older generation. So they would rather get less money, but they will have their freedom. And so, and I think that falls very closely to what you write about ego, if I'm correct. So, what is this chapter about, Ego 5?
Detaching from ego. I think that's the part that,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
So
letting,
depend,
go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So detaching from ego means that sometimes we do things based on our egos. Most of the time, actually, most of the time when we do things, when we say things, we don't really think it through. Like so, um, the ego wants us to win, right? The ego wants us to, like, I don't know, be number one, or be the most beautiful person in the room, or sometimes it can be look so positive, but it's coming from ego. I want to be the nicest person. I want to be the person that donate the most. Still, it comes from ego. So when we do a self work, the hardest part is that seeing when we're doing something out of ego or out of love. So that, yeah, that is hard, because humans and ego are closely attached. I mean, part of being human is having ego, and it's good. I mean, it's so when I'm saying that detaching from ego is not about losing your ego, because ego is what makes us human. And being number one, winning, it's not all that. Like, I don't think we can have a rocket ship, like, or launch a rocket to Mars, if we don't have that kind of ego brewing inside of us. So it's not about losing, but it's about detaching. Because for some, uh, for most relationship problems, the problems is not about you are not being affectionate. The problems is mostly about that you act based on the ego. Like, when you detach from the ego, you will see that there are so many things that feel so wrong. And then you know how to act based on love after that. So that is detaching from ego.
Okay, so that seems to me that this way you sort of step aside of yourself, and you see your actions as other people see them, right? And then detaching from yourself allows you to be more self-critical. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. So, and thank you, Candy, for putting us back on track, because this conversation is so interesting that your book is very interesting, because I think a little promo for your book, I think, is important at this point, because people, when it comes to anything, searching yourself, any psychological help, it's hard. But in the beginning, you said that you can do it yourself. You can do it on your own, which is again important during this time when people try to take a step towards self-discovery. And I think it sounds like a very good encouragement that you can do, go and step on this journey on your own, rather than going to these expensive, coaches and counseling services. So that's good. Still, there are important services that we need to consider. So now, since we have promised to our audience that we will have 6 steps that we will discuss, let's begin talking about this. What is the first step?
Okay, the 6 steps are, the first one is acceptance.
Say it again.
The first one is acceptance.
Acceptance, okay.
Yeah, acceptance. The second one is forgiveness.
Okay.
And the third one is self-worth. The fourth one is detaching from ego. Number 5 or the fifth one is letting go. And the last one, the 6th one, is inner needs.
Okay.
So what are they all about? Acceptance is, for most of us, we need to accept ourselves, but not just about the self, not just about the who, but about our situations, about our history. Like, sometimes most people will look back at their old self and wishing that everything's, is not as what it used to be. Like, sometimes people can wish that they were born into a rich family, things like that, And then acceptance is not just about accepting who we are right now, but also accepting our past, how we are being raised. Like, that is acceptance. Just seeing as it is and taking it in, which can be very big, especially if you're especially if it's the first time you're doing it. You can be quite overwhelmed, actually, because when we do self-work, it's not about like the last 5 years. No, it's about the last 30 years, the last 40 years, back to our childhood, back to when we are 5 years old.
And I think it's huge. Thank you for that, because I've met so many people, and tell me, Scott and Candy, if you did not have similar experiences, how many people, younger and older, live their life and continually complaining. Like, the reason I'm this way because what if I was brought up by this family, or if I was born in a wealthier family, or if I had a music gift, or if I was a writer, or if I had a better body, if I was not black. Oh my goodness, so many ifs. But so what you say, accept your whole life, accept how you were brought up. Okay, that's important. What do you think, Scott and Candy?
I wanted to ask the question: does this acceptance involve any assessment, whether it was good or bad, or is it just recognizing, okay, this is where I came from, this is where I am right now, this is my reality? Is there any kind of judgment on it?
Oh, okay. No judgment.
Okay.
You can do no judgment when you are at this stage of accepting. Okay. Because when you put judgment, there's a whole lot other stories going on. Judgment is no match for acceptance. It's actually the biggest enemy. Because I know we are big on judging ourselves. The biggest part is judging ourselves, not about judging others. And for the most people who judge others so likely, basically they usually also judge themselves harshly. They just put a mask in front of it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So that's acceptance.
Okay,
Moving.
before we move to forgiveness, I have a question related to what you just, Scott, said. So does it mean, for example, if we judge our parents, for example, oh, let's say my dad did this and that, and my mom was such and such, I know many adjectives will go here or examples, and then this way people do not completely accept themselves because they're continually excusing themselves for example, if not my parents, I would be a better person. And they live with that. I remember how President Clinton said that, excusing himself from what happened in the Oval Office, he says, my mom abused me. And I thought, for goodness gracious, you are almost 60 years old man, president of the country, and you still use that example. So that's judging, right? And not accepting yourself as who you are and working on that rather. So do I hear you correctly?
Yes. So for most people, why it's hard is because, it doesn't matter if you are 20 years old, if you are 60 years old, no matter how wise you are, accepting yourself as who you are, accepting your past as it is, it's not going to be easy.
Okay. Yes.
Especially
absolutely.
when there's abuse,
Yeah.
toxic relationship, and trauma, accidents, things like that. It's not going to be easy. I know that. And I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm saying that it's needed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it's
What I
always
want, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this. I know someone who says, well, my mother was very abusive to me, and I grew up in an abusive home. What should she say to herself in her head? Should she just say, this was my home, not judge that home life, not say it was abusive, just say, this is who raised me? I'm trying to understand that. How do they get over that?
okay. So when someone is on traumatic relationships, trauma, abuse, they are going to need more than a self-love work. They're going to need therapy, like so many therapy. And it's not easy. Believe me, it's not easy. I've known several friends actually that has that kind of traumatic experience, and they need a lot of therapy. But still, when they choose to heal and move forward, they will need to accept that as part of their life, their past. So it's not about, you know what, my mother abused me and that's okay. No, it's not.
No.
It's never okay. Abuse is not okay, no matter who did it to you, no matter how long it was, no matter how, like 20 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's still an abuse. The behavior, like I said, it's not tolerated. It's not right. What you're trying to do is accepting that it is already part of you. Why? Because you can only have two choices, whether to accept it or trying to change it. But you cannot change that. Like, it's not something that is changeable. So if you're trying to change that part of your life for the rest of your life, imagine how it will block you from reaching out the happiness, the success that can come to you if you only choose to move forward.
What I hear is that acceptance stage, step one, also includes accepting the need of counseling or medical help. So that's part of acceptance, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
So any questions about the first step then? Wonderful questions. Wow. Yeah, because that could be, that clarification was very helpful. Thank you, Candy, for your question. So then the next one is forgiveness. Correct? Okay.
Yes. And we've talked about this. Like, forgiveness is include in forgiving others and forgiving ourselves. I think that is the biggest part. Um, when I was on forgiveness state, it was not easy. Um, you know, being accepting for you for who you are seems a lot of easier when you already move into the stage of forgiveness, because then you open up the old wounds and you're trying to see the person standing in front of you who is doing all of the things to you, which is not easy, especially if what happened is abuse and traumatic experience. It can involve like a PTSD or anxiety attacks, things like that. And it's not, like I just said, that it's not for all people, especially when they have PTSD, when they have traumatic experience, abuse, really, really heavy abuse. I mean, most of the time, every children in the world, every one of us have our own dysfunctionalities, right? I mean, family dysfunctionalities. I think every one of us have one, but some people have it worse. Okay. So yes, some abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, that's not going to be eased up by doing self-love on your own. It's going to need more like therapeutic experience to be whole again, and it's okay. Back to the acceptance, accepting that you need therapy is one of the self-love, because I think most people, we used to see psychology and psychiatry and people going to therapy as bad thing, like oh my God, you're crazy. That's not how it is. Like now we know that mental health is far greater than that, and it's not just about is the people behind the therapy is going crazy or not. It's not just about that. I mean, when you took up psychological exams or tests, we know that for most people, most normal people who aren't sociopath or psychopath will have a tendency to, to have either narcissistic, either schizophrenic. Most people, most normal people, the one people that is not having any tendency is usually the sociopath. So based on that, we know that it is normal to have, some anxieties.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so that's forgiveness. And we talked in the beginning also about forgiveness. So let's move now to the third one. What is the third step?
The third step is self-worth.
Self-love. Okay.
Self-worth.
Self-worth. So we've talked earlier, like when you start to forgive others, the biggest part is then forgiving yourself. And when forgiving yourself, the part that comes up is that you are blaming yourself. Before you can forgive yourself, you are constantly judging and blaming. Because once you forgive others, the focal point is going back to us, right? We are the one who can be blamed. We are the one who we can judge. Because we cannot blame it on others. We already forgive them. We already accept them for who they are. So the focal point back on us. So it's going to lower your self-worth until you can learn to forgive yourself. And after you forgive yourself, you need to reassess your own self-worth, how you see yourself after all of that. Like, so we know that okay, you know what? I did some mistakes. I shouldn't do that. I'm degrading myself. I'm putting people on pedestal. I'm not giving myself enough time. I'm not focusing on my own priority, and that's what I fail. And that's when you think all of that, it's going to lower your self-worth. And your self-confidence is the next best thing that gets hit.
So self-worth is the next step, or Self-worth is a part of self-love.
Self-worth is the third step
The
after
next step.
forgiveness.
Oh,
Yeah, the
okay.
next.
After
Yeah.
forget. Okay.
So, when in the self-worth stage, you are going to need to recognize that we are capable of doing mistakes, but we are so much capable of doing goodness. That is one thing that can increase your self-worth. Remembering that we are a whole parts of a human being. It's not just about bad things. So remind yourself of the goodness that you do to yourself. Remind yourself of the achievement that you have. And somewhere along the line, when you are very at a lowest point, it's going to be hard to recognize your own achievement. So the best thing that you can do is go outside and talk to others, talk to your friends, talk to your families, talk to, like, ask them, you know what do you think my biggest achievement is? These are simple questions. And then they can tell you like 10 things that you don't even recognize when you are at your lowest moment.
So what I hear is that it's okay to come to your friends and relatives and ask that question, which is the hardest thing, because
I know,
because
I know. I mean,
we are so humble, we're just like self-deprecating, right?
yes,
Usually, and we
yes,
love to,
usually.
yeah, oh my gosh. But so that's what I think is so important, to have these previous steps in
Yeah,
during the journey: acceptance, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, self-love. Only then you're able to actually uh for real, not just like,
opening up.
oh
Yes.
yeah, for real, to understand that your self-worth is something real,
Yeah.
and you hear it, right? So how else can you find your self-worth?
I think there's a lot of things that we can try to build our self-worth. Like, well, inside the book, there are like several prompts that you can, readers can actually use it. And some of them includes on our reflecting back to uh, the biggest thing that people used to say about us, like the good things, like, oh my God, you're such a good listener. Small things, small things. But
Small
when you
things.
add up the small things, hey, you know what? You get 10 things. You get 20
That's good.
things. Yeah.
So, okay, Candy.
Well, we need to get on to number 4, and that's detaching from.
Okay.
And you did talk about that a little bit already, but that one
Yes.
is a hard one for me to wrap my head around. That one's kind of difficult
Okay.
to understand.
It is. It is. So, detaching from ego, yes, we've talked about it. And by detaching from ego, it doesn't mean that you're losing or you are trying to diminish the ego itself. The ego has to be there for us to be a complete human. But the thing is that we have to know if the ego is healthy or not. And one way to do this is by asking yourself if my thought come from my ego or come out of love. Like when we try to make decisions on I don't know, like making on I don't know, like asking your daughter asking your daughter to do something for you. Like maybe you need them to help you with, I don't know, help you with the laundry, help you with the, working around the house, things like that. Probably. Um, the thing that you can do is you can ask yourself, like, am I asking my daughter to do this because I want to, like, loving them and teaching them how to do housework for them to grow, or to punish them? As
Mm-hmm.
parents, sometimes we ask those things because we want to punish. That's an ego. That's a simple thing. Yeah, yeah. So when you want to do, like, you want to make them be responsible, that's coming out of love.
Okay.
That's okay. And that's healthy. That's teaching them to be responsible, because you know that at one point you cannot be there for them forever. Like, at one point, my daughter has to know how to do laundry, things like that. Yeah.
Very good illustration. Thank you. That did clear it up a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You
Yes.
know, step 5 sounds like it could be easy. How about letting go? That sounds
Okay.
easy. Maybe, is it?
No, not really. So letting go, sometimes you need to let go of things that is not aligned with you anymore. When you do self work, when you do self love work, you will find that you are quite different before you do the self love work, if you do it correctly, and after you do the self love work. Sometimes along the line, there's a lot of things and a lot of people that you cannot tolerate anymore. And trust me, I've done that. And I have those people. I have the events, the experience that I don't want to do it anymore, the things that I don't want to do it anymore. And sometimes at a very if it's at a very drastic point, uh, sometimes you need to change your job, change your locations. Yeah, at some point when you do self-love work and you know what, there's nothing left for me in this city, some people will be triggered enough to change environment. So that is letting go. The real letting go means sometimes you need to letting go of the feelings. Sometimes you need to letting go the people. Sometimes you need to let go a complete, like, your complete life and move to a new ones. Depends on your situations. And
That
so
is
it's not
much more than I
yes,
thought.
yeah, that's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, letting go is not easy. It's actually the hardest part, because sometimes it needs it's involved physical movement.
Yeah. And it is, as long as it is so harsh almost, but it is important, because that again comes back to self-love, and it even comes back to your self-forgiveness, because you make this harsh decision, but also I think it reinforces your sense of self-worth, that you put yourself first, correct? Okay. No, that is awesome. And Lisa, we are coming back to the time that we set up in the beginning. So we are completing our podcast. But what I wanted to say that from this point on, I would love us maybe to have you back as a guest, because
Oh,
there is something. Yes, because I think we will hear the feedback from our audience, and then maybe have a list of questions, because it is very very different, and I think I like it that you put it all together as a journey. And I think we will show here the website that people can visit, your website. It is a wonderful website, and I will share quickly your how it looks. It's a beautiful website that you have, and so.
okay.
Yes. So from this point, I think it's important for people to know that it is a way for them to contact you. And the website is lisasilvani.com. And I just try to see that maybe from this point, we will stop, and then promising our audience that one day I could not pull out your website on a screen. But I think it's important
That's
for
okay.
people to know that you're available. They can go to your website and ask you questions directly. But it will be a great promise to have you back. And I know the time difference is kind of is an issue, but maybe in the future we can get back together. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Scott. Any questions in the end?
I just want to say thank you for
Thank
making
you.
the effort, Lisa. I know this was not easy for you,
Thank
but we
you.
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Thank you so much. And thank you, Lydia, for having
Thank
me.
you.
What a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We wish you to have a good night's sleep in Jakarta, Indonesia. And also, we're excited to hear that you have a 12-year-old daughter, that you practice with her who you are and what you teach. And I think this is what teenagers especially appreciate, when parents actually walk their talk and they do in life what they teach. So thank you so much. I think it's valuable for us to hear everything you shared today. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you soon, I hope. Yes. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lydia. Bye-bye.